situation there. We should move to pharmaceuticals now. Ranbaxy, the stock is down quite a bit today. Maybe the market has apprehensions about what will eventually happen with Ranbaxy strategy on Lipitor generic. Chirag Talati from Espirito Santo, who tracks it closely, is with us now. Chirag, morning. What do you think Ranbaxy strategy will be, and do you think there are reasons to be worried for investors now in case they have overestimated the earnings from Lipitor?
Morning, Udayan. Firstly, we see this as the biggest catalyst not only for Ranbaxy but for the global pharma industry as a whole. And following the Q3 results and going into the Lipitor catalyst, we actually turned neutral on the stock for the first time in around 14 odd months. Our base case assumption always has been that we expect Ranbaxy to be able to launch Lipitor on November 30th, but we had apprehensions over its ability to win market share. Come today, it still remains kind of a binary event, and there is, as you rightly said, a lot of apprehension about what is going to turn out. However, we still think that Ranbaxy should be able to launch Lipitor today, most possibly, most likely from its own lab facility. However, the exact details in terms of how the launch would pan out, there are a range of possibilities that could play out. Firstly, we could see a comprehensive settlement being reached, or broad agreement being broad agreement over the contours of the comprehensive settlement. Even here, we don't really know, what is the quantum of penalties that Ranbaxy could have, but clearly this could be, the best case scenario for Ranbaxy. Secondly, we could see, there's a likelihood that there will be no comprehensive settlement, but FDA just approves Lipitor on a case-by-case basis. And while, Ranbaxy should be able to monetize Lipitor in this case, this is clearly bad because it still leaves the base business in a state of limbo. And finally, there is still, there remains a likelihood that we might not see any news coming out from the FDA, and Pfizer and Watson just proceed on with their launches. Now, this is clearly a bad case for Ranbaxy, but again, not a gloom and doom scenario, because we still expect Ranbaxy to be able to hold on to its exclusivity given the kind of legal framework that plays out in the US. So our view is that, our take is that we do expect some announcement coming out from Ranbaxy and FDA later today, and most likelihood we should be able to see Ranbaxy being able to launch Lipitor over the next 2 or 3 days. After that, all eyes will shift on to market share, and we have our apprehensions on how they'll be able to win market share for Lipitor.
Chirag, hi, morning. What about the worst case scenario that some people are talking about, which is that Ranbaxy is forced to sell the rights? How probable is that, first? And second, how would that affect estimates for you for Ranbaxy?
There is a very minor likelihood, in our opinion, that Ranbaxy will be forced to sell off its rights to somebody else. If you clearly look at the legal framework over there, even if Ranbaxy does not get an approval today, but they get it in next 2 or 3 months, the exclusivity still plays out. There's a very little likelihood that they'll actually lose out the exclusivity. So for Ranbaxy to partner or sell out its rights for next 2 or 3 months, I think that's the likelihood is very low. If that were to happen, still there would be some kind of profit sharing that would play out. Clearly, that would probably lead to a 50% cut in terms of our valuation for Lipitor as a whole. What is more important over here is that how it impacts our estimates or expectations of its other paragraph 4 pipeline products, and that is where I think market will start to have apprehensions about. So if this is kind of scenario that we are talking about, then we could clearly see 150 rupees valuation for its paragraph 4 pipeline turning out to close to 75 odd rupees. So you could see a dramatic cut happening, but that is not something we anticipate will happen.
A couple of Indian companies have quietly settled issues with the US FDA, Chirag, that have been lingering for quite a few months now. I think there was an analyst call last week in which Ranbaxy had said we will sort out whatever issues need to be worked out. What is your sense of how prickly the relationship is right now between Ranbaxy itself and the US FDA? In the sense, could they create more hurdles if the relationship is quite sour?
The exact state of what's going on with the FDA and Ranbaxy Ranbaxy, I mean that is something nobody has a clue about. Clearly the relationship has been very frosty, and over time and again we have seen FDA sort of countering Ranbaxy, or Ranbaxy appointing its own sort of negotiating people to lobby with the FDA. So relationship is not at its best. But then let's not forget that this is a drug that is the largest selling drug in the world, and for US FDA, if they don't approve the drug at this point in time, it would clearly result in a significant loss to the Medicare and Medicaid agencies as well as to insurers. So I think in all probabilities Lipitor will be launched by Ranbaxy at some point. In terms of the settlement, I think that is where there are concerns over whether they'll be able to get Devas and Pontaside back on track, and I mean it's very difficult to predict what's going to play out, because some of the issues that were pointed out in Devas with regards to cross-contamination and stuff, those were pretty serious issues at the time they were pointed out, and Ranbaxy clearly went on an offensive mode rather than sort of taking it on lightly with the FDA, and that has not worked well. So at this point in time we don't really know how the lobbyists or the consultants are working with the FDA, but a settlement we think would be very favorable for Ranbaxy. It just remains to be seen how it gets worked out.
Two quick issues, check on that, Chirag. One, there is a lot of divergence in estimates on what kind of market share Ranbaxy might eventually get, given the response from Pfizer as well, and B, on the quantum of penalties that Ranbaxy might have to pay eventually. On these two, can you just give us your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, for past 12 odd months we have been saying that Ranbaxy is likely to disappoint on analyst expectations as far as market share is concerned, and our thesis was based on the channel dynamics that kind of play out in the US market. If you look at how the US market has played out in terms of prescriptions over the past 10 years, the percentage of prescriptions dispensed through the mail order pharmacy channel has gone up from 10 to 20%, but at the same time it is as high as 40% for Lipitor, and this is a segment where Ranbaxy historically has virtually zero sales coming out. So this is an area where we have had our concerns, and that's why we have been expecting market share of close to only 25% for Ranbaxy over the 6-month time period. Now over the past 6 odd months we have seen a moderation in analyst and investor expectations in terms of market share, and the kind of optimism that was built with regards to Ranbaxy winning 40% market share, I think that has now come down gradually to 25 to 30%. So we hold the view, I mean, that Ranbaxy should be able to win only close to 25% market share, which in this case would turn out to be close to 28 odd rupees impact in terms of its EPS over the 6-month time frame. Secondly, with regards to your question about penalties, I mean it's clearly there's a range of outcomes here again, but what we have been saying is that let's not forget that this was a whistleblower-led investigation that took into place, and we had done an analysis quite some time back, and our analysis indicated that when it's a whistleblower-led investigation and where's Department of Justice involved, then you see the quantum of penalties being on the higher side. Our base case assumption at this point in time is that we could see $300 to $400 million penalty, but then the range of outcome remains very, very high over here.
Thanks, Chirag, for your thoughts, and John for joining it today. That's the analyst from Espirito telling us what they make of Ranbaxy's Lipitor.